Hey there, and thanks for listening to the Beyond These Clinic Walls podcast. I'm your host, Julia, a PT turned product professional, joined by my delightful co-hosts, Emma and Emily, founders of the Clinician Transition. Each episode, we interview former rehab professionals who have leveraged their clinical skills into non-traditional roles. I invite you to come hear the journeys, follow the career paths, and learn about the opportunities beyond these clinic walls. This episode of Beyond These Clinic Walls is sponsored by Prompt, which is an EMR and practice management tool that utilizes modern technology to make the lives of outpatient rehab professionals simpler and their clinics more profitable. If you're a rehab professional that has ever worked with any EMR solution, I'm sure you've had that moment of frustration and thought, why are we doing things in 2022 the same way we did in 2002? There has to be a better way. And there is with Prompt. So go ahead and take a look over at their website, promptemr.com, to learn more. Prompt celebrates clinicians in non-traditional roles, and they're constantly hiring. So keep a lookout on their careers page, which you can find at promptemr.com. This week's episode, we sit down with the absolutely delightful Kayla Covert-Calhoun, PT DPT. Kayla is a concussion specialist during the day, myth dispeller at night. From the clinic to the keyboard, Kayla translates complex medical knowledge into digital products as a freelance medical writer. And guess what, guys? There's even more. Kayla is hosting her own writing workshop on Tuesday, July 26th from 7:30 to 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. If you're interested in medical writing at all, this is the event to be at. You're going to learn tips and tricks on how to make your writing better and just strategies for your approach overall. So head over to the Clinician Transition page on LinkedIn or Slack to sign up now. All right, I'm done talking now. Enjoy the rest of the episode and happy listening. Welcome, all our listeners, and welcome, Kayla Covert-Calhoun.
Thank you.
Kayla, absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast today, and I am so excited for this episode. I think this might be my favorite episode yet.
Oh, thank you.
I'm very excited for it. I'm really excited to take a lot away from it as well. And I wasn't excited about medical writing at all until we met. and I got to hear from you and how passionate you were about it. So I hope that, and I know for sure that that will be brought to our listeners. So Kayla, can you give us a little overview about your career just at a high level?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the invitation to come on and share the love about medical writing, because I'm sure that many people share the same feelings as you. It's like writing, but I promise you, it's a little more exciting. So I'm a vestibular physical therapist for the Baylor Scott and White Sports Concussion Program here in Frisco, Texas. We serve about 30 high schools in the area, as well as the Dallas Cowboys. And then we also conduct clinical research on clinical outcomes and treatment after sport-related concussions.
Whoa, wait.
Super cool.
Yeah, very cool. Now I'm just like going to fangirl out. That Dallas Cowboys, that's really cool.
Yes, all of it is cool.
All of it is cool. Sorry, I know.
All of it is cool.
I got distracted by the shiny things.
That is a very shiny purpose, yes. It is really cool. We have a lot of opportunities afforded to us because of that affiliation, and we're very grateful for that. But it allows us, to add on a certain level of prestige that the community sees. Oh, this program works with the Dallas Cowboys. My son or daughter gets to be treated by the same professionals who look at the Dallas Cowboys. And it's a big selling point for us, but we make sure that everyone knows we provide the same care to your 8-year-old son or daughter as we do to the 28-year-olds that you see on TV.
Yes. It definitely worked on me because I was immediately, which not to skim over your other achievements, being a neurospecialist is awesome. So I'm really excited to actually just kind of dive right in today into medical writing. So I'm hoping you can kind of take it away and maybe start about some of those definitions, just kind of give us some of that overview.
Yeah. So before we start with this, I just want to share that, I was not always this knowledgeable about medical writing. My biggest takeaway occurred during residency at Pitt. And my mentor at the time was prepping and filming her concussion module for MedBridge. And she asked me if I wanted to create the supplemental materials for it. And I said, yes, put me in, I will make you so proud. So I spent days prepping the energy crisis and the neurometabolic cascade that happens after the acute injury, and putting it in these nice, cute, neat sentences, shipped it off to the marketing team over at MedBridge. And I wish I could show you the draft that I received back, because it was probably the most humbling experience I've ever had. The draft was covered in just red lines. I had to change the settings on track changes because I couldn't read through their edits. And my beautiful sentences on the neurometabolic changes that occur in the brain were condensed to this sentence: think of the brain as the yolk in an egg. That's what it became. And it was at that point that I realized, wow, I know nothing about writing. And I can't translate anything. So that is where I started. And from there, that is how I became exposed to actually what medical writing is. And it's not just manuscripts or slide decks and proposals. It is much more than that, which is a really great segue into the actual definitions of it. So, simply put, medical writing is this big umbrella term, and it encompasses several different categories or subcategories. So there's content writing, there is academic or scientific writing, and there's also content writing. There's several different specialties within those areas, but those are three main areas that would really pertain to us as clinicians. And essentially, regardless of what category you're writing under, your job is to really create either printed or digital materials that relay medical or healthcare related information. And it's in its most simplistic form, it's knowledge translation. That's really what it is. It's taking the research and the manuscripts that we read, or the product data or information, and just translating it for your audience to understand. Now, the interesting part comes from who is your audience and what exactly are you trying to persuade them to do? So that is where you can differentiate what those types of medical writing is.
I see a lot of parallels already from physical therapy and clinical treatment, knowing your audience, how to explain things. I like this already. We're going to dive into those questions in a little bit. I'm just curious personally, what's your favorite sector to work in? Content writing? Which one do you like the best?
I can tell you which one I like the least, and that's copywriting.
What is copywriting?
So maybe we should start there. Yeah. So copywriting is translating that evidence, translating information, but you have a specific goal in mind, and that is to persuade your reader to take some form of action.
Okay.
Usually that falls under some sort of marketing scheme or marketing ploy. You want your audience to buy into your product.
Okay.
You want your audience to buy into a certain belief that will cause them to buy the product. You're trying to sell them on something. You're being a salesperson using a written word, essentially.
So that's your least favorite?
Yes, that is my least favorite. I find it very difficult to sell without sounding cheesy or without being overly aggressive.
Yeah.
Sales is not my strong suit, as you can tell.
I know whose sales is their strong suit, and I'm wondering if she has any follow-up questions.
No, I can understand that. And I like to think I kind of know how to do that, but after this call, I'm sure I will know that I really have no idea how to do that either.
Well, I was just thinking about copywriting too, and how it can be applied in a lot of different settings. Because I am not in sales, but I think I would consider myself to also be doing copywriting. But I have that same struggle of, sounding too aggressive or sounding kind of cheesy. So that's interesting. It makes me feel better that you have the same struggle.
Yeah, for sure. It is definitely a balance, especially if you are not specifically writing for a device company or a product company or farm, and you're trying to sell a device or a product or something tangible for your audience to listen to. If you're trying to sell an idea, a very specific idea that's going to directly benefit your employer, that's where you have to be a little more creative and figure out that balance between copywriting, content writing, and it sounds like a little bit of scientific writing too, Emily.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, that's a really good thing too, is that you can blend all of them together like in one. Oh, that's interesting.
Yes, you absolutely can. There are so many parallels and so many areas of overlap between the three types of medical writing. So, even though I don't particularly enjoy copywriting, I do have some clients who say, I know you're a subject matter expert in these areas. However, I want you to help me sell this neuro device by adding in a little bit of your expertise, but your main goal is to drive in organic traffic to our device website. So there's a very fine line between what is copywriting, what is content writing, but the reality is you're going to be doing a little bit of both.
I have two follow-up questions. One, so what are the three divisions again?
It is copywriting, content writing, and scientific or academic writing.
Okay. Would you say medical writing as a whole is more of an art or science?
Can I choose all of the above as an answer?
Yeah. As I heard you talking, I was actually thinking that if I had a spectrum on either side, one would be art and one would be science. And I think, each component of what you talked about would fall in a different part of that. So some have a little bit more structured, it sounds like, where you have a little more background or evidence that is a little bit more sciencey and you're able to kind of write that structured thing. Whereas moving to this more not as tangible outcome and trying to persuade someone moves it more into the art. But I think it can kind of go either way.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the beauty of medical writing. It's really that marriage or the intersection of scientific rigor and the scientific process, as well as creative processes that we all have as therapists. As rehab professionals, we are so creative in coming up with treatment plans and modifying our tried and true exercises to meet the needs of our patients. We are very creative individuals. It's just tailoring that creativity into something that is written is the challenge.
Do you think you can maybe talk a little bit about like the forms of medical writing and copywriting? So you have like a bunch of examples on here: grants, healthcare policy documents. What kind of is the most maybe common that you see, or of clinicians that you see the most initial pull, the ones that might have the hardest to get into? Can you do a little rundown of those?
Yeah, absolutely. So as clinicians, I would say our biggest exposure is probably to the scientific or the academic writing. Those are our manuscripts, our peer-reviewed journals that we're reading, that we are very accustomed to analyzing and exposed to in school. And that is where we get the newest literature, and we get some watered down version of it through our professional organization. So I would at least hope we are very well exposed to that form of medical writing. However, you consume content and copywriting on a daily basis. As soon as you open your phone and you browse through social media, you are going to see an Instagram ad that probably reflects what you talked about 10 minutes ago in conversation. But that is honestly some form of copywriting, getting you to click on that product and take you to that website, that web page. So you are constantly consuming copywriting and content writing. You just don't know it. When if you think of your favorite merchandise, your favorite line of merchandise, you go to their website to purchase their clothes. That web page, that landing site that you land on is written by copywriters.
So it's everywhere.
It's everywhere. Yeah. It's not written by the graphic designers. It's not written by the web designers. It is written by copywriters whose job is to attract you onto the website and keep you there for a very specific time.
Where do you find the majority of people tend to gravitate? Is it towards copywriting?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that copywriting is more widely known. It's the term probably isn't, but I think the idea of copywriting is most widely accepted by clinicians in our field because that is where the money is from. Okay. That's where the money comes from. And it's probably, I would say, one of the easier styles of writing to pick up on, whereas it's unlikely that you're going to find clinicians who want to write manuscripts
Yeah.
or want to write or who want to write grants.
Yeah.
And you need a team to do that, right? You need a team to analyze your data and write the methods and the part of the report.
Right.
With copywriting and or content writing, you really don't need a team. It can be a one-trick pony.
I'd love to hear. So that's kind of talking about where the most draw is. Are there any that have like hardest barrier to entry, and then kind of what those career options look like? I know you have a breakdown of full-time, part-time, and then the different sectors within that too.
Yeah, so for career options, you can go one of two ways. You can either choose to make this a full-time career, or you can do this as a part-time or a freelance position. So for those people who decide to pursue careers in medical writing, you're really looking for employers who are in the most likely the private sector. So these are going to be your big pharma, your medcoms agencies, biotech, those types of companies that hire medical writers to help push their grants through, help gain manuscripts and presentation and proposals, as well as write regulation documents. So knowing all of that information, that is a very challenging career field to break into because you have to have a very specific skill set. You have to know what the FDA regulations are in order to write the regulation documents.
Right.
You have to know how to analyze their statistical data in order to create clinical implications that would benefit the physicians. So there is a very specific skill set. So that is also why the compensation
It's so high
in those fields are higher.
Yeah.
Some other areas to consider if you want to have a career in medical writing are medical education companies or academia or healthcare organizations, as well as government agencies. They do hire medical writers. However, with most of them, you're going to be part of the marketing team, or you will be hired as purely a medical writer and work with subject matter experts to extrapolate the data and then condense it, do a little bit of research, and then combine it. You'll work within a team. Medical writing can be an individual career, but you're most likely going to be alongside other writers as well as editors.
Especially for like the pharma and the biotech jobs for medical writing, do some of those require a clinical license or, something where you're really connected to what they're doing because of the expertise needed?
That is such a good question. And yes, that is another reason why it's extremely difficult to break into those categories because they're looking for the PhDs, the PharmDs. Most of them are looking for medical doctors as well, not necessarily DPTs or occupational therapists, definitely not speech language pathologists. So that can be a very big challenge to overcome. And so knowing that if you're going for one of these jobs, be prepared to justify how your medical background and how your experiences equate you to the lack of educational background that you may not bring to the table.
Do you have any examples of how you've overcome that challenge? Have you been faced with it with anyone that you've worked with?
Yes, I actually have. In one of my previous jobs, I worked with a research director who really did not feel that physical therapists or any rehab professional played a valid role in research, in clinical research. He thought that research was meant to not translate to clinic. He was obviously not a clinician. And he thought, yes.
We all have strong feelings right now.
Yes, it was a tough barrier to overcome. Unfortunately, some personalities are just not meant to mold with yours. So it is what it is, and I try to work the best I could within that confined area. So I proved myself to my immediate peers. I proved myself to my mentors in the field, and they saw that even though I probably wasn't going very far because I'm not interested in pursuing a PhD, that I was organized and I could perform the research, I could contribute a meaningful conversation to the topic that was being researched. And for them, that was enough and that was more than sufficient. So I do think, the big takeaway point is if you do find yourself stuck in those boxes and those boxes don't seem to be moving, find some way to be successful to the best of your ability. And I do feel like that will open up experiences and opportunities elsewhere when you're ready to move on.
That's excellent advice. And I think that's transferable to a lot of the careers that clinicians are moving into out of the patient facing care, because I think we want a lot to happen very quickly, and being able to hone in where you currently are, make the most of it, and really strive in that area, I think will long term, you'll be able to get some road under your feet and really start making moves.
Yes, I love that. And reflecting back on this now, I can see that the time I spent under the direction of that research director was not lost. Maybe I was not the one in the driver's seat, but I was on the ground writing every single day. I was pumping out data. I was next to the stats men and women, and I understood more than I did coming in. So I do feel like that was valuable experience. It just was not what I wanted.
Yes.
It was what I needed, though. So that's an
Yeah.
important distinction.
For sure. It probably fueled your fire to really deliver and be like, oh, just you wait. Just watch what I can do.
Is there anything that kind of helped you stay in that mental place? Because I know as I was transitioning and trying to make the best of the situation I was in, it can be a hard mental place to be in. So I'm just wondering if you're just a more evolved human, which I think you are, or if there was any things or tricks or anything that helped you with that.
That's another really good question. I am a huge, huge advocate for concussion rehab. And out of all of the specific types of rehabilitation, it is a rather newer specialty practice. And as as a vestibular therapist who primarily treats athletes after sport-related concussions, I feel like it is my duty and my role to advocate through that. And the way that I have a bigger impact is through clinical research. That is where I can put my footprint, and I can have a bigger effect on the athletes that I can't reach. I do that through research. So that is really what fueled me to keep going, because I knew if I didn't put in the time and I didn't develop my writing skills, my academic writing skills, and make my connections in the clinical research world and prove myself that I could do the dirty work, I knew I wouldn't last long at all.
I love that. Just focusing on the impact that you're having and that you want to do.
Yeah. Kayla, I think I want to be you when I grow up. So just putting that out there. Hey guys, sorry to interrupt. Isn't Kayla so cool? She's the best. I just wanted to let you know, if you're listening to this and you're really interested in dipping your toes, or maybe you already have a little experience in writing, Prompt, our sponsor, currently has some openings for clinical content writers. So go ahead, check the link in our bio and follow it over to Prompt career page to learn more. Skipping around a little bit here, but I want to know, we kind of started to just touch on it there, but then aside from the obvious medical knowledge in the background, how did a background in healthcare help you with writing, and how did developing your writing skills help you elsewhere in the medical career?
So if I'm being completely honest, Julia, this was the question that really stumped me. Yeah. And I didn't know how to eloquently describe this. So my degree certainly opened the opportunities. It certainly opened the doors and introduced me to the people who already had the opportunities. So absolutely, it was excellent for that purpose. But I'm not quite sure how much it helps me become a better writer. I don't know if it did. I believe clinicians who are writers come into the field of medical writing with inherent biases that we need to discuss and acknowledge.
Ooh, interesting.
So for example, if you have a client who asks you to write about telehealth, and you as a clinician have provided telehealth services, whether you're aware of it or not, you are most likely going to write your piece or your deliverable based upon your experiences, your opinions, and how you view the field of telehealth, you're probably going to think to yourself, well, I've been practicing telehealth for 3 years now. There's not much research I need to do. And that is where our biases can really turn us into, quote, bad writers. So I think that if you are going to be a clinician who is going to transition into medical writing, take a step back, look at your biases. I know my biases. I know them so well that I refuse to take on vestibular and concussion products and clients. I will not do it because I am so highly specialized and highly focused that I cannot remove that bias. So in that matter, I don't know how much my medical degree or my physical therapy degree has helped me with my writing. However, on the flip side, I do think that writing has made me a better clinician. I am more organized. I am more articulate. I am able to present my ideas in a very organized and understandable manner. And that has really, really helped my treatment, my medical or my patient education to patients and families, especially our younger kiddos. And I do feel like it makes me a little bit more relatable because I can translate the medical jargon with much more ease than I was able to do before.
Yeah, translating to just adult patients is one thing, but then to pediatric population as well. Has that really helped you in that regard too?
Absolutely. Our average age of our patients in our clinic is 15. So 15, that means we are seeing a much younger population as well. And you need to be able to tell them why they can't join their best friends on the soccer field this weekend.
Yep.
And not only that, but you need to do it in a persuasive manner. So you need to be a little bit of a salesman, but you also need to be empathetic. And I do feel like being a writer and writing and creating products for so many different clients has enabled me to do that. And I have really, really developed my human side of being a clinician.
Yeah, that empathy is such a common theme. And I think that's something as clinicians we're so strong with, and something that we're so good at carrying it beyond these clinic walls. I feel like we really need a little jingle with that.
I tend to, speaking of biases, have a bias of, I mean, I'm so passionate about physical therapy. How does physical therapy relate to this? And how can we use the translatable skills? But it was just really interesting to hear you say, no, this other thing that I'm doing actually helps me be a better PT. And so it's kind of cool. You can go and do something else. And if you decide to go back into the clinic, or if you're in a hybrid role, you may actually become a better clinician by branching out a little bit.
You know what I wanted to ask? Kayla, how do you do it all? Like, what does your normal day look like? Like, are you a superhero? Maybe.
Well, I'm actually in school right now as well.
Of course.
So
casual.
So my mornings start out pretty early. I get up and I either, depending on the day, I either get in a quick workout or I'm doing schoolwork. And then I go to work. And then usually my afternoons at work are research time. We treat in the morning and then we have research in the afternoons. And then after I leave work until about 8 o'clock is my protected family time. And Emma, we talked about this a little bit in the clinician transition about how you manage that work-life balance. And my solution is protected family time. There are very few exceptions, but between the hours of 4 and 8 are my kid time, my family time. And then after 8 o'clock, that's work. That is work time. I actually have a medical writing business, so that is what I do after 8 o'clock. Sometimes I write till 10, sometimes I write till midnight. It really just depends on the deadlines that I'm looking at.
I was going to say, just to clarify, we had that conversation in the clinician transition Slack, putting on my sales hat. So if you'd like to be a part of that, you should come on over and join us.
Do we just do we just search the clinician transition in Slack? How do we get to it?
There is a link that's in the clinician transition group.
Is that on LinkedIn?
And then you can, that's on LinkedIn. And maybe if you want, you could also attach it to the description of this amazing podcast.
Oh, for sure. All resources will be attached.
Yes.
I was going to say, that's a pretty packed schedule. So what keeps you motivated?
This was also the question that I had to ponder for about 12 hours because it's obvious. It's the money, right? It's the money.
I appreciate that transparency.
So much. I can relate to that as well.
Yeah. I feel like we dance around it a lot, but that's a big factor.
Yes.
Yeah, I asked my best friend, I asked my husband, how do I say this eloquently? And there's no other answer. It's the money. Every client that I take on, every project I take on through my writing business serves a bigger purpose, because I ultimately know that this is going to take time away from my family and myself. So it better be worthwhile, and the money better be worthwhile. And whether it is meeting my micro financial goals or my macro financial goals, it serves a monetary purpose.
When is your book coming out? Is my
and can we have the first release and an autographed copy?
Yes.
I have this conversation with my mom all the time. In my head, it doesn't seem like a lot, but sometimes when I describe it to other people, it does sound like a lot.
I'm glad you said that though, Kayla, because something that I bump into a lot in my current job is kind of helping therapists celebrate being business owners, and we can help people and also get compensated for it at the same time, and that's okay. We, as clinicians, we provide a incredible value to people, and I think getting compensated for that is okay. And by the way, the better compensated you are, the more people you end up helping. Kind of to your point earlier about how you're writing and you can reach more people with your research. I think you honing those skills kind of supports that theory as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, obviously, there's very little financial gain when I'm doing manuscript writing or for work purposes. I understand that. With that, it's more of like career aspirations, supporting our concussion program and our research initiatives. So that serves a slightly different purpose. I'm actually in school right now for grant writing. And that, however, is tied to a financial purpose, because the more I can prove myself with my grantmanship and my academic writing when writing grant proposals, the more I will be put on these grants. And chances are, when you're put on grants, there is a monetary value that you, depending on your institution, you can be awarded. So that does serve a rather selfish purpose as well.
Now, you're pretty far along in the medical writing. So what are kind of the monetary things for people to expect who are just getting into it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. You can take a couple different avenues when you're a medical writer. You can go, or part-time medical writer. You can attract clients through job boards, job postings like Upwork or Worksum or Fiverr with 2 R's. Or you can go through a staffing agency like Creative Circle. That's a little bit more structured. You'll have an interview, you'll have a liaison or an agent who will help find you positions. They'll be like the third party. And of course, with either of those options, you will pay a fee, you have to pay the middleman, or you can do freelance like I do and market yourself, find your own clients, and retain all of those earnings yourself. So it really just depends on what types of projects and what types of deliverables you're offering that can dictate your pay structure. So for freelance medical writers, if you're setting your own pay structure, you can either decide to charge your clients like a price per word. You can do an hourly rate. You can do one large lump sum per project, or you could even charge them a percentage of the sales, especially if you're producing like a course, or you're writing the course launch for them. You can ask them for a percentage of their sales in addition to a smaller, reduced one-time project fee. There's a lot of different ways that you can charge your clients and gain revenue from it.
Any pros and cons, or ones that you think people just starting out should focus on more?
Yeah, you're not going to earn a lot when you first start out because you don't have a portfolio. Yep. So, I did a lot of pro bono and free work. A lot of people don't want to hear this, but that is how you build your portfolio. You have to get your name out there. You have to establish backlinks to your own webpage or your own portfolio. And you have to start networking too. So this is not an instant gratification side gig or side business. You really have to put in the work. I can remember my first paid blog was for Graston. Again, went into it with my own biases because I have that Graston certification. Yep. So I thought to myself, I've taken both courses. I've done Graston for several years. Like I don't need to put too much into it. Sure. And I should not have been surprised when they gave me $50 and said, we will be moving in a different direction. There's a lot of sticking points in the beginning of a medical writer's journey, just because you do have to build your portfolio. And you have to be selective about your portfolio building. You can't just write a blog article for this company and then a totally different blog article that contradicts what you said in the other piece that you provided. Your prospective clients are going to look at how well you can present an idea, and you have to be really intentional with the works that you show them and present them. Just for an example, if I have a client who wants me to write copy for them, I'm not going to show them my academic portfolio. I'm not going to show them my content portfolio. I have different portfolios depending on which client wants to employ my services.
Do people come to you? Like, do they go on Google and say, I'm looking for a writer, and you've done your own SEO and you're popping up at the top, or do you solicit them, or is it kind of both ways?
I did in the beginning of my writing business. I created a website. I put my portfolio on my website. I advertised what type of services I did, and that attracted a certain type of clientele. And in the beginning of my business, I was not very intelligent about my business plan. I had no idea what types of clients I wanted or projects that I wanted, so my floodgates were wide open. And over the past couple of years, I've really decided, no, I'm not going to write continuing education courses because they take 50 hours of the month for me to produce. I'm going to stick with these types of clients that also fit in well to my current obligations. So, in the beginning, absolutely, it's a great idea to build your own website and attract your own clients that way. Of course, that comes with some startup costs. If you're going to create that website and then you have to find a web hosting platform, there are some costs associated with that, but you'll easily make that back with your first couple clients at least. I work off referrals now, though.
So I'd love to now hear, because I know everyone is fired up, including myself. Like, I'm ready to dive in. Can you take us through how to get started? Kind of what are your big takeaways?
So my biggest piece of advice is to identify your goals as a medical writer. If you are interested in publishing your research and publishing your manuscript, you do not need to know the ins and outs of copywriting. There's really very little overlay with that. However, with each different goal, whether you want to earn some cash on the side or you want to create this into a career, there's different skill sets that we talked about earlier that you're going to want to know and learn. When you go on job interviews and the medical editor or the senior medical director asks you, what is your experience writing regulation documents? And you have no idea what they're talking about. That is not a good sign. So there are definitely key vocabulary words that you're going to want to know, and those skills that you're going to want to pick up on depending on your medical writing goals. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is just take a step back and understand and celebrate how much overlap there is between clinicians and medical writers and how that applies to your writing goals. Similar to what Emma and I have talked about in the past, we're salesmen, whether we're writers or we're clinicians. And it's just a matter of, what are you selling? Are you selling an exercise plan, or are you selling an idea or a thesis, or are you selling a product? We're always selling something. And then, as clinicians and writers, we're constantly gathering data, interpreting, analyzing, and then translating it to an audience, whether it's patients, our directors, or supervisors. We're translating something. So we're very good at that. That is definitely within our wheelhouse. And then this might differ from profession to profession, but there are certain key metrics that we are very accustomed to as clinicians, productivity being one of them. So everyone knows what productivity is, but in the writing world, everyone knows what KPIs are or what metrics we need to meet. So if you're in the copywriting or content world, you know what a bounce rate is, you know what meta keywords are. And not only that, those are your KPIs that your bonuses might be based upon. So there's a lot of really decent and valuable overlay between medical writers and clinicians, and it's understanding what that is. Once you have those pieces figured out, start exploring your resources. So take a writing class, go back to school. There's anything from free classes to really, really expensive classes. The best free class I have ever taken is on Coursera, and it's called Writing in the Sciences by Dr. Kristen Sineri, who's at Stanford. It is an excellent class. I've taken it twice. It's pretty lengthy, but the information that is inside of it will make you 1,000 times better at writing, for sure. And then you can also explore some writing resources, some free writing resources, like the American Medical Writers Association has some valuable information, as well as the Purdue Online Writing Lab and the Harvard Writing Lab too.
I just wanted to talk quickly about that little beginning where you're setting your goals in writing. And I think it's really important, and it's been a theme that I've seen with everyone moving into a different career out of their traditional clinical role. And it's this self-discovery phase that I think is so important for people to really take the time and identify what they like, what they don't like, and really do some hard research. And you might not know exactly what you're looking for, but just that process of learning. You talked a little bit about just understanding which direction you want to go with writing, but then learning the vocabulary of it too. I think the more you start investigating a career that you want to move into, that self-discovery journey is huge.
Yeah, absolutely. Probably right now, all you hear about are my wins, but I have had a huge number of losses. I've had clients tell me that my writing is substandard, my writing is subpar. I've had failed blog attempts. I tried to be a blogger, didn't work. Tried to be a blogger influencer, that didn't work.
I'm trying to be a podcaster, so I'll keep you posted.
That's a major win, Julia.
We'll see.
Major win. But yes, I've had several different failures or hard learning points along the way. And that just kind of steered my boat away from those and propelled me into this scientific academic writing that I am strongly pursuing right now.
Which I kind of asked a little bit, but that success with writing and just producing an end product that you love it takes so much revision. You have to have thick skin. You really have to be open to feedback. So what keeps you coming back for more?
It's really very simple, Julia. It's the money.
It's the money.
It's the money. Like I said, if it's not connected to my job and my clinical research at work, it is all for my medical writing business. Yeah. And I have, every single year and every month I sit down and I evaluate my financial goals. And I ask myself, how can my writing business support these financial goals? And how many projects or clients do I need to work with in order to meet those goals? That's really what it is for me.
Yeah.
I don't spend, I don't work 60, 70 plus hours per week because I want to.
Yeah, of course.
I hope you invite us on your super yacht.
Yeah. I've been watching a lot of Below Deck. I will be ready to go.
Yeah, mine are, I don't know. COVID really, really scared me. I'm sure a lot of people can relate, but the pandemic really frightened me. I was a new mom. My husband suffered a huge financial loss because he's in the nightlife industry, which was non-existent during the pandemic. So it really made us reevaluate how we can achieve our financial goals independently and as a family. And so since then, I have really restructured my business and what I take on and how it distracts from my family time.
I appreciate your transparency there, and I think it's refreshing to hear. I think moving into a new career is you hope for the best and that it's something that you just love. But I appreciate your ability to prioritize your family and be able to do the things to support that.
It is tough because, I feel like as newer, younger, inexperienced clinicians, we don't necessarily have that perspective, do we? We're trying to be the best clinicians possible.
Yeah.
And with reimbursement now and unrealistic productivity standards, it's really tough to be your best self is what I tell my toddler every day. Be your best self. It's really tough. So every time I meet someone who is interested in transitioning and they don't know what exactly they can do or how they can support themselves a little bit better than through their 9-to-5, I try and push them towards medical writing, because even though it is a skill and even though it's not an overnight success story or instant gratification, it is immensely rewarding if you put in the work.
Be prepared to work. That's where we need that Kim Kardashian TikTok audio. No one wants to do the work. I love it. So you have this Fast 5 lessons. Can you tell me more about this?
Yes, Fast 5. I feel like it's always good to conclude with Fast 5 lessons. Okay, here we go. You got to stop waiting for the inspiration to hit you. You just got to write. My favorite quote from my professor is, write drunk and edit sober. That is the best piece of advice I've ever heard. Because when we're under the influence, we think we're invincible and we think every idea is a good idea. So why not write with that mentality? And then the next day you can revise and you can edit and you can just restructure to your heart's content. But just write. The inspiration probably will never hit you if you keep waiting. The second lesson, we already touched upon that, but build a portfolio. You need it. You cannot attract clients or build a business without it, and be intentional with what you put in there. Don't put your crappy works just because you did them. Be very mindful of what you're putting out there to your clients. The third one, I think this is a no-brainer, but we all need reminders to proofread and proofread it again. My best proofreading tip that I have done since the beginning of my writing career is I proofread backwards, because we're all guilty of mental fatigue and cognitive fatigue. So by the time we reach the end of our document or product, we're done, we're checked out, whether we want to accept it or not. So if you go in the next day with fresh eyes and you start at the bottom of your document, you can see what you might have missed the day before, and you can fix that and revise it. So that's my best proofreading tip. Number 4, writing is an iterative process. Our professor told us, expect to write 15 to 20 drafts of anything you do. That kind of really crushed my soul a little bit, but it's true. You have to continue to revise. And, we also learn in class that writing and revising is not a linear process. You don't get better with each revision. You might slide down a couple of steps and you might have to go back to the draft table, but it's still upward progress. It's still pushing you to your final product and your end goal. The last Fast 5 lesson is writing. Writing is not like riding a bike. You cannot rely on muscle memory to get you through your assignment or your product or your project. It is a skill that you need to do every single day, whether that's joining an accountability group, joining a writer club, or journaling every day. You need to practice writing. I write 6 to 7 days a week, and that is the only way I became better. writers are susceptible to burnout just like clinicians are. We fall into ruts and loss of creative momentum. We are vulnerable to that too. So the same thing applies to medical writers as it does clinicians. And you have to do the same thing. You got to unplug, power down, and then get back to it. But you have to get back to it. That's the key.
I wish everyone could see this constant stream of head nods whenever Kayla says anything.
I'm just Emily and I are just head bobbing to everything Kayla says. I love it. I love it so much. Kayla, a pleasure having you on the podcast today. This is great. And I love that you wrapped it up with the Fast 5 lessons. Kayla, any questions that you have for us or any last things that you want to talk about or pitch?
I just wanted to really thank you guys for being such gracious hosts and sparking this very important conversation on how our clinical skills translate to other areas. Your work is very powerful, and it honestly provides momentum for these professions to move forward, because a lot of us have found ourselves stuck in a rut, and it's very inspiring and it's very encouraging to know that there are supportive groups and supportive clinicians like yourselves to help show us, no, there is a way forward, and here are some ways and strategies that we can help you with that. So thank you.
Thank you for your support and for paving the way for a lot of people.
We are also going to have an amazing follow-up. Kayla is being generous enough for people who are listening and have either been thinking about getting into medical writing, or maybe after listening to this, you want to explore it more deeply. We will be doing a writing workshop with her. So please be on the lookout for that Eventbrite link, and it will be super organized, and you'll have a little homework to do ahead of time, so you'll already get a little taste of what writing is like.
And then for Kayla's workshop, this episode, I believe, is going to be a prerequisite to attend.
Yes.
Awesome.
That is a good call out. Yes, too. That will be super clear in the Eventbrite. This is a prerequisite, if you will, for that workshop to make sure we're on the same page.
You must share with 10 of your friends as well as a prereq before joining.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah. It could be your parents.
Oh, wait, there's more.
Yeah.
Your aunts and uncles.
So I'm like, Mom, listen to our podcast. I love it. Kayla, do you have, not to put you on the spot, do you have a quick elevator pitch for your workshop?
Come see what I do every single day and why you should do it too.
Awesome. Any specific things that we're going to be able to walk away with after that workshop?
Yes. So we have built this workshop to really explore the common pitfalls of writing and clearly define what is good writing and what is bad writing, and how do we avoid those pitfalls, or how do we use those strategies to become better writers.
Do you have to have any writing experience before coming to this?
No, none at all.
Awesome. Great. There will be some homework that you have to do.
There will be.
Okay. Great.
Yes, that is worthwhile, and it will all come full circle.
Perfect.
Once you log into the webinar and we talk about it.
Okay, great. Looping back to that self-discovery journey, I think if you're interested in medical writing and you want to get a little bit more of a taste of it, this is going to be this is an event to attend, or just meet Kayla and fangirl like we do on this podcast, because that works too. Hey, thanks everyone for listening to this episode of the Beyond These Clinic Walls podcast. Special thanks to Prompt for sponsoring this episode and creating an EMR solution that helps you spend more time focused on your patients and your business. Follow the link in our bio to check out their openings for clinical content writers now. If you think you still need a little bit more experience first, fear not. Head over to the clinician transition page on LinkedIn or Slack and sign up for Kayla's writing workshop, taking place on July 26th. As always, be sure to follow the Beyond These Clinic Walls podcast on social media, on LinkedIn and Instagram, for all the latest updates and episode releases. Questions, comments, concerns, or do you just know someone who would make an excellent guest on our next show? Reach out to us at beyondtheseclinicwalls@gmail.com. And as always, thank you for listening.